Okay, we might get started again. Welcome to the public forum for the Select Committee on the Status of Water Trading in New South Wales. This session is an opportunity to hear directly from people who have an interest in the water trading market. Before we commence, I would like to make some brief comments about the procedure for tonight's public forum. Speakers are asked to register in advance for the forum. Those of you who have registered to speak will be called upon to come to the table in turn. You have approximately 5 minutes to speak to the committee. We will sound a warning bell at 3.5 minutes, so you are aware you will need to conclude your comments. What you say today is being transcribed and streamed live to the Parliament's website and will be included as evidence in the inquiry. It is also important to note that, again, while participants are covered by parliamentary privilege, committee hearings and public forums are not intended to provide a forum for people to make adverse reflections upon others under parliamentary privilege. In that regard, it is important that participants focus on the issues raised by the inquiry terms of reference and avoid naming individuals unnecessarily. And finally, I sincerely thank those who have come along for tonight to share their story. Well, that runs on in quite a funny way, doesn't it? Anyway, there you go. Who's first? We've got Mr. Stephen McGrath. No. Okay. Yep, just come to the table, please. Come on down. Some people are more comfortable standing, some people are more comfortable sitting. We'll have you sit, if you would, please. Thank you.
Oh, actually, we're just as nervous as you are.
You just turn your microphone on. There's a little button in front. That's it.
I'm named Steve. About 3 years ago, when Lake Airfield and associated and the water come down the Darling Field, Menindee, and so forth, to where these rivers are now in flood. Now, just taking water from the southern irrigators to supplement the north's not going to work. Everyone has to put their share in, and you just can't keep robbing Peter to pay Paul all the time. Now, as I said, I run 3,500 hives of bees. I've got bee sites on the Murray River, the Edwards, the Waiku, the Mbidgee, and Lachlan. I've got private sites up in the Darling. I see what's happened every time I go there. I've got bee sites at the lower end of the Lachlan. Lake Menindee was full, was full now, but three and a bit years ago it was full. Look after and so forth, and say, well, if you've got the land, where's their water? Where's the water was supposed to go down there to help save them? Now, I don't know how you emptied two big main dams in that system in 3 years, but the dams are there for dry years. That's what they were meant to do. So the blokes who got the vines, the citrus, and so forth, when they need that water, that's what it's supposed to come down for. And not to pay the amount of... So I've seen that many oranges pulled out around in the Griffith area over the last few years because they can't afford to buy the water ever since we put it out in the open market. Now, so these fee simons have been here for years, for decades. They built the area, and I'm saying is, you got a system where is I got $1 billion, I can go out and I can buy what I want, and I'm competing against that. The farmer down there has worked his life. He's come in, he's cleared the land, he's planted the trees, and those corporations, I mean, these people can't compete against that unless the system's fairer. I mean, I've worked in this area for 40-odd years. I've seen where all the local farms that I used to put bees on are now owned by corporations. And that doesn't, you go from here to Ardleft, and go here to Young, go here, out along the West Island, go all around this district, go out towards Hay. And the environment and farming can work together. And so, and there's no reason why I said this water coming down the river should be classed as environmental water, because it's doing what it's supposed to do, flooding the forest, filling up the lakes, and going down towards the stream. The dams that the government gives to fill for these companies to fill up, they're getting filled up down towards the end of the Darley, the end of the BG. The pumps will start as soon as the water gets down there, and that's what it was designed to do. But in the long run, you've got to try and work out how a bloke who's a normal average person has a fair going, because at the moment they're not. They're just packing up and leaving. And like I said, I live in a country town got 30 people. I'm the biggest employer because the people who own corporates come, go, and gone. So I mean, and that's what I look at. So these other blokes are probably irrigators. They've got to probably better understand of what they need, what they don't. But anyway, I think most of my time is it.
That's it.
That's all good. Anyway,
thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. McGrath, for your comments.
Thank you.
Thank
That's
you.
right. Not best to go first.
Chris Hardy.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming and joining our lovely area. I'm here representing probably 4 generations of irrigation farmers. I suppose gives me a bit of background on water and irrigation, and you guys have been around water enough to know that it's very complicated. You've probably also been around enough to know that there's a lot of misinformation around. It's very accurate. As a irrigator, as a annual cropper, we and my mates, and I suspect a lot of people I'm speaking for, are more than happy for the permanent plantings, the nuts, the citrus, the crops, the high value crops that are going in that weren't in a number of years ago. It's probably safe to say that our irrigation industry has grown significantly since the Basin Plan, which is a little bit unexpected, but that's all due to water trading. And the high value users are working a treat. We're more than happy to sell them on dry years. We don't have to grow crops. If they need our water more than we do on dry years, we'll sell to them, and we're happy to do that. There are some disbenefits for our local communities, but there's nothing valuable about a broke irrigator. If we can make money, we're there next year to buy our machinery, to spend our money in our local towns. So I guess I'm here to say that I'm not saying the water trading system's perfect. It's working well for us. If it wasn't for water trading, we wouldn't have a nut industry. And our communities are thriving because of that. I don't know whether you guys have had a look around Griffith, but it's a pretty wealthy place. The industries are doing well, really well, and it's all based on water. Since water was separated from land, which was actually done at irrigators' request, the water trading has become an integral part of our risk management. Every irrigator, I'd venture to say, that uses water trading to buy or sell for strictly risk management purposes. And it's a huge part of our risk management program. And hopefully you guys can see through the myriad of misinformation that's been spread around. Thank you.
Thank you. Sandra Williams. No? Not coming up? Okay, thank you. Mr. Moorshead.
Chris Moorshead, sir.
Good to see you made it.
Yes, apologies for my attire committee. I've been in the process of delivering children to various sporting commitments.
And you got the right one, you got the Waratahs on.
Yes, this is true. Let's hope they have a better year next year. Look, I'm horribly underprepared. However, farmer with a fifth generation on the go as well, hopefully. And long-time participant in water trading, water markets, both permanent and temporary entitlements. It's an incredibly complex situation. It is a very emotional market. And I think the best way to start off is with the macros is when you're talking about water, it's not a discretionary expenditure item. Water is a need. It's not a want. And when you enter a market or when you enter a season, and this can be any irrigator, we've found ourselves short of temporary entitlement any time, and you have made a commitment to produce, and you do not have the water to produce, you get very, very antsy. Markets can move very, very quickly, and without the security of knowing that you can water and finish your crop, you are very, very much exposed. I think if we go right back to the very beginning, I came back to the farm in 2003. Obviously, the Water Act itself and this whole basin plan was very much in its infancy. We came back to the farm in 2003, my wife and I from Adelaide, into a howling drought for 7 or 8 years, which is the best 7 or 8, I was only 23, best 7 or 8 years of my productive life, I thought. We faced several seasons of zero allocations, very tough going. At the end of that, we sat down as a family and said, how do we insulate this business from this happening again? And it was a very simple answer, was we needed to buy a diverse portfolio of water products that allow us to meet our commitments on a yearly basis. That meant varying degrees of high security, general security, low security, carryover products, anything that we needed to secure our production system, or trade the water that we owned to make more than we were growing with it, to make sure that we met our requirements around the town, could pay our staff and ensure our business survived. That has been a very successful strategy for us. We, even only 2, 3, 4 years ago, We actually grew 5% of the nation's rice crop. And if you had the bloke across the road who has a similar portfolio of water, was 10% between us. We grew, 4,000 tonnes of seed rice for sunrise, all of which was planted the next wet season. So my experience in the water market, I reckon we can make year in, year out growing produce. If we're faced with a season that temp water prices trading at 350, 300, 350, 400, it's a very difficult decision for us. However, at times we'll continue to produce to keep my staff going and to keep the guys in town, our producers, going. We might decide to sell a proportion of it. But because we've bought water in differing valleys, we're able to buy and sell and continue to produce here when we can. And that's really important. The suppliers that I deal with around town are really happy with that. They know that we will be producing, even if it's only a little bit, every year, so that they've got some certainty as well. The guys that sell tractor parts have got certainty. The guys that sell fuel have got certainty. The guys that sell fertiliser and chemical have got certainty. I've heard of some really interesting things. Region, the economy, than water trading, without a doubt. If I was to frame the market now, Chris Minns is at shorter odds. So the Labor senators that are in the room and the Liberal senators that are in the room, that is our biggest threat. A few guys, and there are dodgy water brokers, we know who they are, we just don't deal with them. It's very simple. I deal with somewhere between 9 and 12 different platforms during a week. But like I said, I'm reasonably well engaged. But that 450 GL is a far bigger threat. Should that be recovered, I did some quick sums there. It's basically 675,000 tonnes of rice, 450,000 megs. That's what the entire industry grew this season.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Morshead. Your time is up, and thanks very much for your contribution.
No worries, Tut.
Thank you. Anthony McCluskey.
Excuse me. Anthony McCluskey. I am a water broker. I run my own business here called Key Water. I have clients across a number of valleys and also outside of the basin. I have dealt with clients along the east coast of Australia and up into Queensland. I guess one of the interesting things was I wasn't here during the day, but I read some of the submissions, and a lot of those submissions seem to my understanding is that the focus of this is on water markets and the status of water trading in New South Wales. And a lot of those submissions seem to be more focused on what was wrong with the Murray-Darling Basin Association or the plan or something like that. The markets are a part of that, yes, but if that's what you're focusing on, then there seems to have been a lot of other white noise around the place that isn't necessarily relevant or didn't seem all that relevant to what you were trying to discover, as far as I can understand. I'm a member of the Australian Water Brokers Association. We have a voluntary code of conduct that we put forward to our members. We worked very closely with the ACCC and many other government bodies during not only the ACCC inquiry, which I don't know if you guys are overly familiar with it or have read it or read the recommendations that have been forwarded on to the committee that is then developing this roadmap to reform. So when I hear that, that urgent reform is needed or anything like that, well, when they do use it. Regulation would provide water brokers with similar things like real estate agents, where you're able to develop trust accounts for managing clients' water. At the moment, because we don't have the regulation, we're not able to do that. We have client-only funds. It's one of the prerequisites of being a member of the association. But what we want is that legislative backing to be able to do that. And that would be better for everyone involved. The AWBA had a general meeting in Canberra last Monday. We were addressed by Senator Perrin-Davey and Minister Plibersek. And the people who are developing the roadmap to reform for the water markets based on the recommendations of the ACCC inquiry were there. That information, or the roadmap, the initial draft, will be delivered to the Minister between September and December this year. So we are well down the road to trying to get this reform done. It's just a much... it has been, as has been said, it has up until now been unregulated. The only thing really covering was consumer and criminal law, obviously, if there's fraud or anything like that. ACCC looked at 8 million data points gathered from a huge number of contributors in terms of the status of the water markets. Basically, to the ACCC. In terms of a couple of other things I wanted to address, when I hear people saying that corporates are taking away the opportunity for people to be involved in agriculture, I take it from a different point of view. When you look at young farmers who want to get into primary industries, and when you look at the cost of land and water these days, stumping up the capital for a deposit or something like that is hugely prohibitive. But these companies that own land and water and can lease them out to people for an annual cost is much more affordable to get people into agriculture. It's actually a really good way of helping them get a foothold into agriculture, lease the land and water for 5 years, maybe roll it over, and then when you've got some money built yourself, you can do it, because when you speak to your bank manager, you're looking at an annual cost, not this huge lump of capital that you've got to find to buy all this stuff in the first place. So there are real opportunities with this model, I guess, of ownership outside of your standard farmers. I deal with irrigators from small hobby farms right up to, yes, providing jobs for New South Wales people. Is that 3.5 all the time?
No, it's 5 minutes.
Righto, all right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. McCloskey, for coming. Mr. Darren Di Bertoli.
I've been involved in the water debate for quite a long time, looking at the science behind it, and I think everyone realises now that the assumptions were wrong, and the assumptions that we're talking about, the 450 gigalitres and everything else, was based on the fact, going back to the 2007 Water Act, so that's a time frame, is that the lower lakes and the Coorong were dying because of the Murray-Darling system, which is not right. Particularly what people may not realise is the Coorong continues to die. Irrespective of what you're told about the Southeast Restoration Flows project, the Coorong continues to die because there's no flushing flows. In terms of the science behind the lower lakes, the lower lakes were being compromised by the Southeast drainage system as before the 1902 Royal Commission. And back then, the Commission basically showed that there was, the Royal Commission showed that there was basically for 5 to 6 months of the year, that the water levels in the Murray River were less than 1.2 metres, and you don't have to be rocket science to know what that means during summer. So once you understand that the flows were over the top of the more elevated wetlands, and the southeast used to be 44% wetlands per-European, but so all the science that we're talking about, environmental flows, everything else, was predicated on us supplying water to sustain the Coorong and Lower Lakes, which was wrong. Now, that's just the background. In terms of water trading, I think water trading has delivered a fantastic outcome, both socio-economic and environmental, because unlike the US system, you're not encouraged to use it or lose it. So it goes to productive use. But one thing I am highly critical of is, in which the southeast, the farmers in the southeast have got right, is they actually franchisee relationship. And we know how that works. They'll charge the maximum amount of water the buyer can bear. And I just think it's going to, over time, hollow out the communities, the small irrigated communities of the Murray-Darling Basin. And those communities don't just service irrigated communities, they also service very large dry area communities. And Griffith's a prime example of that, Mildura would be a prime example of that. You can know most of those communities, very much the case. So my argument is one thing that needs to be looked at. Hopefully New South Wales understands that the science was corrupted. We need to fix the science. South Australians are slowly coming on board after being at this for over 10 years. Copped a lot of flack over it, but the science is showing what I was saying is right, and what I was saying was supported by people like Professor Peter Jewell was showing. The diatom record in the Coorong, there was no Murray-Darling River diatoms in the Coorong because the flows never came from the Murray-Darling system. They came from a completely opposite direction. And being an aquifer-driven system, it was far more reliable than the Murray-Darling system. So look, I think, if we're talking about the environment, let's get the cards on the table and recognise the Coorong's dying, and that's nothing to do with the Murray-Darling system. It's dying at the rate of 6.5 mils of organic matter that falls out in the southern lagoon, 5 mils a year that falls out in the northern lagoon, and as that organic material breaks down, it strips oxygen out of the water column, and you wonder why all the water birds are disappearing. You would think from an environmental point of view, and the problem with the 2007 Water Act, it states the lower lakes and Coorong are off the table. And yet that's the reason why we're talking all these large environmental flows. And a well-managed system can achieve socio-economic and environmental outcomes, but we're not there yet. We're far from it. And New South Wales has to stand up. Lisa Neville in Victoria has been doing a sensational job. And she's probably the only water minister in the country that had a good grasp of what was happening. And it's time for New South Wales to stand up as well.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else who hasn't put their name forward that would like to have a say tonight? No? All right. Well, on that basis, we'll bring these proceedings to an end. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you very much.